Joining me is our City Hall columnist, Dan Fumano. Hey, Dan.
Hi, Harold.
Another council week. I see one thing you highlighted for me on the agenda is has to do with cars on Water Street this summer. So what is council considering this week?
So basically, this is stemming from a motion that came to council last year in May of 2023 to basically explore the idea of what they called a streets and public realm planning and design process for Gastown, including experimenting with a car-free shutdown of Water Street. So Water Street in Gastown, removing all cars from the street and having a pedestrianized kind of area there for some point in summer 2024. So what's happening this week is city staff are coming back to council, reporting back on the work they've done so far and seeking council's guidance on how to move forward, basically in time to experiment with it for this summer 2024. So with a pilot project to pedestrianize Water Street and then report back after the summer with sort of what they learned and how it goes.
So as I understand it, I guess if I'm understanding the report correctly, they would, for the whole summer, July and August perhaps, they would close off Maple Tree Square area at one end of Gastown and then kind of leave the middle open for access from other areas, and then close off the other end as well for those 2 months, closer to the other end of Gastown, but leave some traffic flow except for big events where they would close the whole thing. Is that your understanding?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that sounds
okay. Because I guess one question people that have, you close the whole thing for the whole summer, there is a big parkade there. Isn't there?
Yeah, there's a huge, and the city owns it. It's a city-owned parkade, right? It's
right. And is that the only way to access it, is off of Water Street?
No, I believe you can access it off Cordova.
Oh, okay. So that would still be the parkade would still be open. Okay. During that time.
I think so.
Okay.
I believe so.
Okay. All right. And there's not a ton of parking along there, but there's certainly a lot of commercial vehicles that pull up to service the restaurants, etc.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know exactly how that would work. I mean, they're talking about tour bus operators, the businesses and stuff. But yeah, I mean, the pilot they're talking about for 2024 would be 2 car-free blocks, Richards to Canby, and then, as you say, yeah, around Maple Tree Square. And then, and then I guess they'll report back from it and how the, traffic circulation works on Cordova and neighboring streets. And
so I guess this will also give them an opportunity, especially that Maple Tree Square area where the roads are very uneven, and I think in need of repair at that end.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's part of it actually. If the road work is part of the consideration, I think it's largely a big reason they're looking at this is sort of in terms of a public realm placemaking kind of opportunity.
Okay, all right. So will this make this won't make Water Street unique? There are other areas of the cities that either previous council or current council have shut down. I think of the area around the art gallery on Robson.
Sure, yeah, the 800 block of Robson there. It used to be that you could drive through there, that cars could travel between the Supreme Court and the art gallery. And then that was shut down, yeah, a number of years ago. That seems like a good comparison. And it's funny because like it wasn't even that long ago, but now in my mind, I think of it whenever I think of that area, I think of it being pedestrianized. I can't even remember when but it wasn't that long ago. It was only a few years ago that cars could pass through there. And inevitably when the city considers taking some space away from cars to use for other purposes, there are worries. People were worried about bus routes. I think there was a bus route that used to pass through there. But it seems to have gone okay. And it seems like a pretty popular public space now. Yeah.
It's true. It becomes an interesting, it obviously becomes a magnet for food trucks kind of in the adjacent area. And you get a lot of, the city puts in some street furniture, places for people to, to sit and hang out. And it does become, particularly, well, when the weather's better, becomes a nice area to visit. We also saw during COVID, because restaurants, of course, couldn't have people indoors, there was a real move to expand the opportunity for outdoor patios, and even patios that extended onto some side streets in certain areas. And there was, again, some, as you say, some concerns about traffic flow, etc. But in many cases, those proved to be quite successful, and some of them are coming back, right, even after COVID.
Oh yeah, no, some of them have remained.
Remain, yes.
And there's even some not just on side streets, but some of them had extended onto like main streets, major streets,
Right.
which I think was that was the ones that were on main streets during COVID were potentially more challenging. So the city, yeah, as you say, responded during COVID to try to allow bars and restaurants to serve more people taking over public space that was previously largely used by car parking, or in some cases using a bit of the sidewalk and the public around there, and in some cases privately owned public space. Even though it was kind of brought forward as an emergency kind of COVID time measure, the city, it was quite popular with a lot of restaurants and with patrons. People liked using these outdoor spaces, and so the city did kind of turn it into a permanent ongoing program, but with some changes. They did try to make some, there were some additional kind of restrictions and guidelines around it that they learned from the pandemic emergency kind of measures.
Right.
But they seem to be quite popular, and I think I would imagine going forward that I don't think these will be taken away. And the mayor and the ABC Council has kind of made a big priority of, they do talk a lot about public realm and trying to make Vancouver a fun, vibrant city. Tourism and business travel and stuff is a big thing for them. The mayor obviously is very excited about Vancouver hosting the FIFA World Cup. Talks a lot about trying to get big business conferences and making Vancouver appealing. He uses the word swagger a lot to describe what he wants Vancouver to be like, and he talks about the fun and exciting kind of streets in some of the other cities that he visits when he's traveling. He talks about Austin, Texas a lot, and he talks about other kind of fun, vibrant towns that have a cool, main stroll or main drag that, this is certainly a big issue for them. And, Councillor Sarah Kirby-Young, who used to work in the tourism and hospitality industry, she's, talks a lot about these kinds of things and the importance of these things to the local economy. And yeah, a number of the ABC councillors are, and I mean, the non-ABC councillors as well are, interested in promoting the public realm and great spaces. But yeah, so I mean, in a place where obviously we have limited space, if you're creating more space for people, often it means taking away space from cars.
Now, you and I will both remember, as many of our viewers will, when the Olympics were here in 2010, and again, that walk up Granville Street was a lot of fun back then, and there were lots of areas that were sort of shut down for different outdoor events and concerts, etc. Granville still seems to be, though, a bit of a challenge for the last council, for the new council. They've lost a couple of big anchor stores on there. I gather, I mean, I know from your reporting there is a big revitalization plan there and the hopes, but where are we at in progress towards that?
There is a Granville Street planning process that's been underway now for a couple of years, and I don't remember offhand when they're expected to report back on the next steps. But obviously, there are some major projects in that kind of right in the Granville Strip that are in various stages of development that would, could potentially be pretty transformative, and different people will disagree whether it's transformative for good or bad. But the 800 block of Granville is the first one I think of, because that is where the Commodore Ballroom is. Because Bonus Properties has their proposal to redevelop almost the entire block. They own almost the whole block except for, I think, the corner store. And their proposal is to do a massive mixed use development that would basically go over the Commodore.
I see.
And it would include a whole bunch of arts and cultural and retail. The Commodore would remain and be renovated, and then tons of office space above. So, and then right across the street from there is another huge project that's currently they're currently working on this construction project for a big multi-level kind of entertainment and recreation complex that I think would be quite large. So these things are underway in the meantime, but yeah, as you say, there's a Granville Street planning process that's been going on for a couple of years, and I would imagine, I'm guessing that staff will be reporting back to council at some point during this term, maybe even during this year, about sort of what the next steps of that look like. I'm not sure. But again, I do recall that when city staff, I guess it was probably last year, announced that they were opening it up to the public, looking for public feedback on the Granville Street planning process, it certainly seemed to be a priority thing for the mayor and the ABC councilors. They wanted to be there. They were part of the press conference, and they were all, I guess they had all coordinated it ahead of time. They were all wearing their favorite like band t-shirts, rock and roll shirts. Like I think the mayor was wearing maybe Led Zeppelin or Guns N' Roses or something, and then different
Yes.
different city staffers were also wearing rock and roll t-shirts.
Oh.
Anyway, and they wanted to try to make a point of, so it was a fairly it was quite a bit of to do for just an announcement about, oh, we're opening a round of public consultation on a planning process for a single street. So you could see by how many ABC councilors were there, that they had coordinated their outfits. It seemed to be a big priority for them. And then, of course, during his comments, the mayor also used the S word again, swagger, where he was talking about how he wants Granville Street to get its swagger back and be a city with swagger, good vibes, good times. So again, this does seem like this general thought of making fun, vibrant places. I mean, I'm sure every city government wants to make their city more fun, but it certainly does seem to be a priority for Mayor Sim and council.
Well, that'll be interesting what happens there, because obviously it's a very long stretch. It's not like just trying to redevelop one city block. You're talking about a long corridor.
Yeah.
So a couple of major projects that you mentioned there could at least kick things off a little bit.
I think it's only a few blocks that they're talking about when they talk about this Granville Entertainment District planning process.
Just a few blocks. Okay.
I mean, I think it's basically from the bridge and to Robson, or maybe a little bit past Robson, but it's really just a handful of blocks. If you look at, but it's kind of, it has a outsized significance because there isn't really another stretch of a few blocks like that in the whole Lower Mainland that serves that kind of a function of a sort of entertainment, nightlife destination. There isn't really another stretch like that anywhere in Vancouver or anywhere in Metro. So that's kind of when people talk about its importance from a planning perspective, that's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. Not everybody wants to, somewhere where there's loud nightclubs and, kind of chaos, but it does have an important role in the region because there isn't really anywhere else quite like that. So that's kind of, and it's obviously it's an iconic part of Vancouver. If you think about iconic images of Vancouver from, the last century and even going into the previous century, like that stretch of Granville has always kind of been one of the most photographed iconic stretches. Now, its character and the vibe there has changed obviously over the years, but it is a pretty important space in, considering how tiny it is in the grand scheme of things. It's a pretty kind of central in the whole kind of Metro Vancouver. If you think about Metro Vancouver, it is a important piece.
Right. All right. Well, we'll watch for that in the future. Thanks, Dan.
Great. Thanks, Harold.